All right, on this story of investing for the long haul and having the patience to see it pan out, with Scott Martin, who wasn't even born 20 years ago, Jackie DeAngelis, who wasn't even born 20 years ago. So here they are with us to put some thought into this. Jackie, the one thing that was interesting about Bezos is he had to encounter that a lot. You talk about people who establish a short position in a stock and think you're going to fall. He was the Tesla of its day. And a lot of people just said, yeah, you're growing fast and fast and fast, but man, we'd like to see you make something on this. But he stuck to that. And he could have, bucked the trend and done some clever accounting to humor them, but he chose not to. It's a different environment today, but the pressure still exists on companies to show investors something, right?
Oh, absolutely. And we've seen it also in the social media space, too, right? With Twitter and Facebook. When these companies first came out, the big question was, it's a great product and people like it, but you have to be able to monetize it. And until they could, they weren't really Wall Street darlings. And so when I watched the clip that you just played there, I think it's so interesting because I'm not sure that he had a plan. He knew he was investing, but I'm watching his facial expressions there. And as he talks about the fact that this is our strategy and we're sticking with it, I'm not necessarily sure at that moment in time he could foresee what Amazon was going to become. And I think for this company, it was really all about diversification, taking advantage of opportunities. Yes, they were investing, and they were larger than some of the other companies that went bust, for example, during the dot-com boom, and they were able to sustain that. But when you think about the fact that he started out as an online book retailer and now is in all of these different retail arms that Susan just mentioned, it's phenomenal the way he's grown and expanded. He's catered to consumer needs. That's what a good CEO does. He really understands the marketplace and delivers what people need. And he grew with the times. It's phenomenal to see what he's turned this company into. And I think his successor has been there well over 20 years. He's head of one of the most profitable arms of the business. And so, you bring up situations like Bill Gates, or you look at Sundar Pichai taking over at Google. You look at even Tim Cook taking the reins after Steve Jobs died. And all of these people were ingrained in the company, and they did quite well. So if Wall Street is sort of a little tepid about it today, that also could be because the market has come so far so fast, and we've had a lot of volatility for other reasons as well. But this appears to be like it will work out and be a success story.
Scott, what's interesting about the Microsoft example that Jackie alluded to here, if you think about how these respected companies have just shot up and grown, the cloud and some of these cloud businesses are a big reason why. Significant for Apple, significant for Microsoft, significant, all the more so for Microsoft long after Bill Gates stepped down, all the more so now that Jeff Bezos is taking himself out of day-to-day operations. So the DNA, the plant is there. I'm just wondering where it goes from here. Would you still recommend Amazon at even these lofty levels?
I would, and we hold it currently, Neil, and we're probably going to buy some more if it does continue to pull back here. As Jackie mentioned, Andy Jassy is the head of Amazon's cloud division, so that clearly shows you where this company wants to go going forward. In fact, not to say that we're going to forget about Amazon retail in the future, but if you look at cloud and healthcare, those are two areas where I think Amazon is really going to start to take over in the next 5 to 10 years.
When you say in the next 5 to 10 years, you've seen these analyst statements, Scott, talking about we see this stock going to $5,000. We see a host of others who, that was kind of the giddy talk we heard in the late 1990s. We learned in retrospect that Amazon and that talk was justified. They weren't saying quite the same thing back then. But that there are some that just separate themselves from the rest. Is Amazon still in that category?
I believe it is. And I think one thing about some of the lofty expectations of $5,000 a share, that's assuming that the company stays together. AWS, Amazon Web Services, and the cloud could get so big they may spin it off, including their healthcare too. So you may look at maybe 3 Amazons in the future as far as a healthcare and a cloud and then retail. And then those things could be obviously big stocks as well on their own.
And Jackie, that is a fear, but also it gets people excited at the prospect of a breakup of Amazon if it came to that, much like they talk the same if they did this to the social media giants. It would be like the breakup of AT&T. Instead of owning one stock, you own all those baby bells at the time in the mid-1980s. So you, as the investor, come out ahead. that seems to be a no-lose situation for Amazon if that is the case. You never want to say such terms, but what do you make of that?
I think that's certainly one possibility. And, you know, from the analysis that I've done, I certainly don't underestimate the ability for Jeff Bezos to continue to innovate. That's what he is. He's a master innovator. And as I said before, he sees what the customer needs, and it feels like he's always a few steps ahead with respect to being able to cater to it. But as Scott's saying, you know, if he ventures into a space like healthcare, for example, and becomes a leader in that space with respect to distribution, and God knows, because I'm not the innovator that he is or how he's looking at this per se, it could be absolutely huge. And so you look at somebody like this and say, yes, he is handing the reins over. When you are CEO, there are a lot of administrative duties that will keep you from being able to innovate and expand the business. And now he's going to be able to step back and have the time for his passion projects, but also to be able to look at the company and say, okay, what's next? And he gets to go back to that exciting period versus having to do, you know, everything else that a CEO has to do. I think it's positive for the company. And, you know, with respect to the initial question about a breakup, I mean, it's not something that seems to be in the cards at this point. But I don't think that it would be a terrible prospect for shareholders.
All right. Well, watch it very closely. Don't go too far, guys. We'll be talking to you a little bit later about this push for a higher minimum wage. Scott and Jackie, thank you very, very much. Meanwhile,